Good morning. My name is Patrick Evans, and I'll be your instructor for today. We'll be talking about end conditions in InRoads 8.7. Let's take a look at what we're going to do with today's agenda. We're going to define exactly what end conditions are, and then throughout the hour I have to spend with y'all, we'll be covering more definitions, and then we'll start with some basic end conditions. Things that you probably never get to do since they're so simple. And then we'll go to a little bit more difficult and then kind of proceed as the morning wears on to get more difficult and more difficult. The goal here is to start out with something where you'll say, yeah, I know how to do that. And then by the end of the morning, I want you to go, now how did he do that? Well, really, I want you to learn how to do it. So I don't want you to be too amazed with it, but hopefully it'll be a learning experience and you'll benefit from what we're going to do here. So we're going to do multiple different types of end conditions with our alignments. But first, let's go ahead and talk about exactly what end conditions are. With the 8.7 release of InRoads, we have introduced a new thing called components. And end conditions are specialized components that are used to create design solutions. Basically, we need to tie into something to complete our design. End conditions replace cut field tables, material tables, and decision tables. And I think as you get into these end conditions, you will see that a lot of the things that you may be accustomed to are already there, and actually they're a lot more powerful the way we can use these. We treat end conditions as an open shape. You know, we can have closed components within InRoads, and we'll talk about some components here in just a minute. That'll be one of our first definitions. But the end conditions will always be an open type component. And we can have multiple target type options, and then we're going to talk about that also. So we can not only target digital train models, but alignments and features and things like that, and we're going to define that as well. As I said, first thing we're going to do is talk about components. This is the definition of a component. We kind of speak of them casually in passing, and you may or may not know what a component is. But it's a set of points that define an open or closed shape that can represent different material or area of interest. And for example, a curb can be a component, or a wall can be a component. So we have these different pieces in there that we can utilize throughout our design in our template libraries. Now, as you can see here on the screen, there are 5 types of components. And the one we're going to be talking about today is the end conditions. Hopefully you've attended some of the other sessions where we discussed the other component types, and if not, maybe you can catch up on that later on. But specifically today we're going to talk about end components. Another new concept introduced with InRoads 8.7 is point constraints. And what we want to do with point constraints is to set up a set of rules so we'll have the behavior of points to appear exactly as we want it to appear in InRoads when we're manipulating these objects. And so we want to have predictable results that we can control, and that's the big goal of the point constraints there. Now, I've got this simple diagram up on the screen now, and I have a typical curb and gutter section, probably not drawn the best since I did this rather quickly. But on the left side, you can see a curb, and you've got a back of curb, a face of curb, a gutter, and a lip. And then at the bottom, you have points 1 and point 2. Well, typically, you're going to want the thickness of your curb and gutter always to be the same. For example, the distance between lip and point 2, you always want to be 6 inches. Now, on the right side, I've kind of simulated a super elevation section. If with no point constraints, the top picture would be what you would expect. You just kind of tilt the whole thing. But really, in reality, you may be wanting to produce the bottom picture, where you actually kind of manipulate what's going on with the component there. So I've kept by using constraints, we can make sure that the lip point and point 2 remain vertical to each other, and the distance between them remains 6 inches. And the back of curb and point 1 also remain a foot or something like that, depending on what your standards are there. So this is just kind of a real basic concept of what constraints are. I'm going to say that the back of curb is always going to be a foot higher than point 0.1, and vertically it will be exactly, that would be vertically, and horizontally it'll always be a difference of 0, so it's in the same vertical plane. So that's just one way of tying down constraints. And we're going to be doing a lot with constraints as the morning goes on, and hopefully I'll explain those in more detail to you. Now, I spoke of the different target types that we can hit with InRoads 8.7 and these in constraints here, in conditions, I'm sorry. And here you have a list of them. And probably if you've used decision tables or something like that, you're kind of used to seeking a surface or an elevation or a different type of feature or alignment. But these can be really, really powerful. And with our dynamic in constraints that we can do now, it's really takes this a step beyond what we've ever been able to do in the past. One more thing I want to talk about is a feature that's been added. It's a little thing, but man, I really like it. It's in condition is infinite. In the past, if you've ever defined a decision table, you always want to make that last record about 5 million feet long or something like that to make sure it would tie in. Now we have this option to say in condition is infinite, and you can make it 3 feet long and just give it that option. It'll go forever until it knows it needs to go try to tie in forever. And so it's a little bitty thing that they've added, but it's really nice. And so it's a handy tool for us to use, and we'll be utilizing that as the morning wears on also. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the product. We're going to start out with basic in conditions. These are the simple kind that you see in school that you never get to do in real life. And it'll kind of introduce us to in conditions and to a concept called priority. And we'll define that in just a second. But let's take a look and see what in conditions are all about. And we're going to start out with just the basic stuff, like I said. So let me go ahead and start InRoads 8.7. I've got both versions running simultaneously on my box, so you can make the transition smoothly. You can keep both of them if you want to. And I'll go ahead and open up a project right here real quick. And that'll blast some information in there for us. And then also I'm going to, over here in the templates, I'm going to open up this sample template library I've got. Now notice that the name structure has changed from the old InRoads template library. Now it's an ITL file instead of a TML file. So that's one little change that's been done for us due to the new format that's going on here. So go ahead and open that up. And let's go ahead and jump into create templates right here. Now I've got a few things set up, and you can organize these things however you want to organize them. If I double click on this, I've chosen to have 4 folders right here. I've got backbones, I've got in condition parts, I've got in conditions, and then I've got other parts. So it's just kind of the way I think. That may be, of course, if y'all know me, y'all know I think weird anyway. But anyway, we're going to start out with just a typical backbone that I've already got in here, and we're going to add some in conditions to it. Now, there's nothing magic about this. I'm not going to go into creation of backbones. It's going to be real similar to what I'm going to do today. And again, I think this has already been covered in a previous section. Just to let you know, if you have an old TML file, you can import that, and it will pull that into the ITL that we're using now. So you're not going to lose a whole lot of stuff. There is some things that you'll have to kind of go in there and tweak with them when you do that. But just want to make you aware of that. So I want to start out with this typical section right here called 4-lane. And I want to add some in conditions to it. And I'm just going to come over here to the right side. And you've got these buttons down here on the bottom left of the screen where you can navigate. And these will come in pretty handy. You can zoom in and zoom out, zoom the Y direction, Z direction, fit, and window areas and things like that. And you also got the slider buttons here, so we'll utilize the sliders. And I'm going to come over here and add some in conditions to this right side over here. So I've got a right side shoulder right here. Now, what's kind of different about 8.7 is you do a lot of stuff with right-clicking. So before I do that, let me toggle on the dynamic settings button. This will kind of help me when I'm placing things out here. And I can set in a step right here. And I'm going to set a step to be a foot in the X direction and a foot in the Y direction right there. You can also toggle this and set a slope if you want to. So if you want to increment your slope by 1% or something like that, you can do that also. But I'm going to leave it set to X and Y. Now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to right click. So that's a right click for me right there. And I have several different options that I can do. I can, what I want to do at this point is add a new component, and then the component type, if you remember, I showed you the 5 types before, we want to add an end condition. So now I get the dialog box at the bottom, and I'm going to add, put the cut section in here first. So I'll go ahead and say this is a cut type, and for a style, I'm going to call it cut. I'll just keep hitting C until we get to cut there. And then now I need to tell it what I'm going to search for, what the target type will be. I'm going to tell it that I want to search for a surface. And this brings up a whole new functionality that's in 8.7. Is you can either tell it a specific surface that we're looking for, or you can say the active surface. And this is huge because if you have a in the past, if you had a decision table or something like that, you targeted a specific DTM. But then if you took it from one project to another project and tried to use it, if the existing ground wasn't named the exact same, it would, you'd have to go in and edit every record there. Now I can say target the active surface right here, and it doesn't matter what it's called. I just need to make sure the existing ground surface is the active surface, and this will tie in for me. So this is something that is really going to help us out and make our lives a lot simpler, make us have to think a little bit less, and anytime we can do that, I'm appreciative. So anyway, we're here, and now I've got this little cursor. I'm going to come up to the right outside shoulder point, and you'll notice that the highlight color on that point turns to white, and that means that I'm on that point. So all I need to do now is do a left click, and I can come in and start placing my points out here. Now, I should have set a temporary dynamic origin so I can get a little better coordinate readout, and I'm going to set it right there. And now I'm getting a dynamic readout from that point, okay? So it's telling me down here in my dynamic settings that I'm 14 feet over and on the same plane due to how I've got this set up. So I'm going to go, I want to actually go at a 2-to-1 slope right here. We'll put it a 3-to-1 for right now. I've also got the ability, if you'll notice in the dynamic settings box, to check for interception, place a point at the interception, and then this is the dialog I talked about previously. In condition is infinite, so it doesn't really matter how long I make this segment. I can just say that the in condition is infinite and go ahead and blast this piece in there. So I'll go ahead and add this one right here, and now I'm going to right click and say I'm finished. All right, so I've added an in condition. Let's go ahead and fit this. Let me scroll a little bit to the right. So I've got a cut situation. Now I want to go ahead and add a fill situation to this. So I'm going to, again, add a new component. It'll be an in condition. I'm going to tell it that it is fill. Change the style to fill also. And then the target, again, will be surface. All right. So now I can start here, and then I'll come down. In conditions infinite is set, so that's perfect right there. I'll come on down and set it to be a 2-to-1 slope like that. Right click and say finish, and now I'm done. Now I want to give these points a little more descriptive name right here, and I think the top slope is not exactly a 2-to-1 like I had planned. So I'm just going to, I can either right click on it and say edit, which I'll do this time, and I'll call this one cut. I'll give it a name. And then I have the opportunity now to change the slope of this point right here. And if I wanted to change the length of it, I could. It really doesn't matter since I've got it set up here to be in condition is infinite. So this is an easy way to do that. I'll go ahead and say apply. And now I'll pick the next point down here. I'll pick this one, and I'm going to call this point fill. And this one is set to a 2-to-1 slope already, so I'll go ahead and say apply. So I've got that done. I've got my my end condition for the right side created, and you can also, there's a mirror function in there that I'll explain a little bit later on. We can, like I said, this is something you never get to do. These are real simple end conditions. So what I want to do now is test this thing. In the past, you probably created a decision table and tried it and it didn't work, and you go, I have no clue as to why it didn't work. Well, you now have the ability to test your end conditions before you go running your modeler, and this will let you see where things are, if it's going to work or not, and if it fails, why it's failing, and then you can correct it before you go out in the real world. Now, remember priorities, okay? I'm going to go ahead and hit the test button right here, and I get this message that says, warning, this template has end condition priority conflicts. Use the check priorities button to view and fix. So, what are priorities? Okay, a priority just specifies the order in which end conditions are processed, okay? Do we want to look for cut first, or do we want to look for fill first? Do we want to try the 6-to-1 slope first, or the 2-to-1 slope first? And that's exactly what a priority is. It's really important. It's a simple concept, but it's a little bit different way of doing things than you're used to. So it's just good to know exactly what the priority is. So let's go back to InRoads right here. We'll say OK to this. Now in this situation, I've only got 2 conditions right here. So I can say check priorities, and I'll say edit, and it shows me, right now it's on cut, so it's got a priority 1, and fill is on a priority 1. So, you decide what you want to do first. If I want to check cut first, I'll go ahead and make fill a priority of 2 right there, and that'll work just fine. If I had chosen not to correct the priorities here, it wouldn't be a problem in this situation because they're distinctly different. But let's say that I had a 3-to-1 slope and a 2-to-1 slope, and there'll be times when either solution would satisfy, tie into the existing ground. And if they're both set to a priority 1, at one drop you might get the 2-to-1 slope, and at the next drop you might get a 3-to-1 slope. So there's no way to guarantee what results you get if there are 2 possible solutions and the priorities are set equal. So now that's why it's so important to go ahead and fix these priorities. And so we'll go ahead and say OK to that, close this out, and now I can come over here and I'm going to say the existing ground is about a 3% slope right there. I'm going to say draw, and as I draw this, it shows me the line tying in, and it shows me the line tying in on a cut slope. So real simple what we're doing here. I don't have any failure reports up here. If it failed, the failure reports would, I don't know if undither is a word, but right now it's dithered. It's grayed out. But so everything is working really smooth here. So if I want to see it not permanently, I can just click and it will show it to me. So there we are. I've put in conditions in. Like I said, this is something you never get to do. It's too simple, but hopefully this is kind of introducing the concept to you. We're going to pump this up here shortly and get a lot more complicated. We'll close that out and jump back over here for a second. Talked about priority. Now we're going to go to Basic End Conditions Plus. This is where we add fixed components to our end conditions, which many of you may have done in the past with cut field tables or decision tables. And also, I'm going to talk about slope rounding. We've added slope rounding to end conditions, and it's a really powerful tool that you can use when you have those situations where you want to add slope rounding. Make your life a whole lot easier than putting together some sort of decision table that does that for you automatically. So let's go back to InRoads for a second, and I'll show you another feature here. You've got these end conditions in here in the shoulder, and you realize everything is wrong. We want to right-click right here, and we'll say Delete Components. And I'll just come out here and draw across the components I want to delete, and then they're gone. Simple enough. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add some new components here. I will right-click, add components in conditions, and we'll go ahead and leave this set to fill, which is fine. And the target type will be a surface. Active surface will be just fine. And now I'll come over here. I'll start there. I'll come over, and I'm going to change these dynamic settings right here. I'm not going to have the this set up, and really I'm just going to put my shoulder in right here. So I'm not going to check for interception. So actually I'm just come over here, and I'm going to put my shoulder out here, an 8-foot shoulder. And then I'll move this out of the way a little bit. I will check for interception, and I'll use a 2-to-1 slope again, and we'll just kind of blast that in there like that. I'll right-click and say Finish. So that's taking care of our fill situation. I want to add a cut situation now. So again, new component, in condition. Call this cut. We're going to target surface, and we'll start here as well. And this time we'll go up on a 8% slope. May or may not be 8% right now, but we're going to come in and edit these points. And I've had that one set wrong, but I'm going to come back and edit those. So we'll just go ahead and blast this point out there like that. Right-click and say Finish. So now you can either right-click and say Edit Point, or you can just double-click on a point, and so you can edit it that way. So a couple of shortcuts there. And we'll call this left outside shoulder. Sorry about that. I hit the tab button there and shouldn't have done that. We'll start over again. Left outside shoulder, and then we'll change the style to shoulder. I'm sorry, it's the right outside shoulder. I've already used that name. Okay, one more time here. Nothing is canned, believe me. Right outside shoulder, and we'll change this to be a shoulder, and let's fix up our slope there. It's 8%. We really wanted an 8-foot shoulder there. We don't want to check for interception. We just want to place a point. We'll say Apply. And now we'll go over here and we'll pick that point there, point 3, and we'll call that one Cut. And all this information is good there, except for we want to make this a 50% slope there. Again, the width doesn't matter because we have that in condition is infinite toggled on. And make sure we always say Apply. One more time, we'll come down here, we'll pick that point there, and we'll call it right outside shoulder 1, since we've already used right outside shoulder. Toggle this over to be the shoulder. Change it to a minus 8% for 8 feet. In condition properties look good. Apply. And then we'll come down. I'm going to have to do a fit on this to find that last point. Point 1 right there. This will be fill. In conditions are good. Minus 50%. And again, the width doesn't matter. All right. So we've got that set up now. So we're going to change our shoulder depending on if we're in a cut or fill situation. And we could have come in here and said, if you click on the component, you've got a priority that you can set now. So we'll go ahead and leave that to 1, and then we'll come down here and say this is a priority 2. So it'll look for a cut situation first, and then it'll look for a fill situation. So I'm going to go ahead and test this, and probably you recognize right away that we're going to have a little problem with this, but we'll go ahead and say Draw. And so it looks like our fill situation is working fine right here. And now, right now, I'm in a point where nothing works, okay? So I've got a failure report right there. I can click on this, and it tells me that my cut failed, to solve and my fill failed to solve for the condition when the ground happens to run along this plane. Now, this is one of the things I spoke to earlier. In the past, you would put together a decision table or a cut fill table and run it, and you have portions in your model that just nothing happened. You couldn't for the life of you figure out what was going on. With the test feature we have now in 8.7, we can test these things and see exactly what the condition is that's making it fail. And admittedly, you need to try 2 or 3 different options here, not just one slope across here, because things are going to behave differently. But this is a real easy way to see what's going on with this and why it's failing. So we'll go ahead and say draw, and we can see that it works the rest of the way. And we could easily come back and resolve this situation here, but by adding another line in there. But I think you've got the idea of what we're trying to achieve there by showing you the test. Okay, slope rounding. I didn't talk about that, and that's why I've got my PowerPoint. It keeps me in track. Let's go back to that typical section here. And slope rounding is actually a function of the different components in here. All right. Down here at the bottom, I have a slope rounding that I can add to it, and I give it a length of slope rounding. And let's just say that I've got a slope rounding of 10 right there. Jump back over here for a second. And this is how slope rounding works. It's going to compute the point where it would have tied in naturally, as you can kind of see the middle line there in the little graphic I've got in the top right-hand corner. That's where it would have tied in. And then it adds 4 points. And it kind of rounds based on a parabolic curve there. And in the past, if you wanted to do slope rounding, it was kind of a decision table thing where you targeted and retargeted and kind of adjusted it that way. But now it's just built into the software, and we really don't have to do anything, which is really neat. So it's going to add 4 additional points and provide a slope rounding pretty much as you see here. Okay? And you can do this on cut slopes or fill slopes. It doesn't really matter. Let's jump back over here. I'll give it a rounding length of 10 on the cut right there. And just for grins, down here on the fill, we'll give it a rounding length of 20. So we can actually apply different rounding factors there. Again, we'll come back and test, and we'll have that one little problem where it doesn't tie in right down there at the in the middle. But now you can see I've got slope rounding going on down here at the bottom. And then if I switch over here to a cut situation, I also have slope rounding going on in a cut situation, utilizing the different parameters that I've set up. So it's really easy to do slope rounding if you're called to do that. And it's just a click of a button now, which is great compared to how you used to have to do it. Okay, we're going to kind of get a little deeper here, starting to get into some things that you actually probably do. And we're going to have InRoads do multiple slopes, because typically you're going to have we want to use a mild slope to tie in if it wasn't too far out, and kind of increase as the distance gets further, you'll steepen the grade. And you're probably all familiar with this, but I just want to show you how you do it with end conditions, because it's a little bit different. Not real difficult, but just a little bit different. I'm going to jump now to a different folder here. I've got one set up for, let's see, it's over here under end condition parts, I believe. I've got a left side already set up, and I've got it set up for fill. And we'll go ahead and test that, and then we'll add a cut situation to, we'll enhance it and add the cut features to it so you can see how that works as well. But if we test this, I'll say draw, and you can see it's going to start out with a 6-to-1 slope, and I've told it to go out for like 12 feet, and if that doesn't work, try to a 4-to-1 slope for 10 feet, and then a 3-to-1 slope for 8 feet, and then a 2-to-1 slope, which is infinite. So let's add in here a instead of a fill slope, let's add a cut slope. And it's really not hard to do at all. We'll say add in condition. Again, we'll tell it our target. We're going to add a cut situation here. Set our dynamic origin at that point. And sorry about that. Okay. So we'll start here. And I want to go at a 6-to-1 slope to start out with. And so I'll go out here, and I can see by my dynamic settings down there that I'm 12 feet over and 2 feet up, which is a 6-to-1 slope. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. I'll right-click and say Finish. Again, I'll right-click and say Add New Component, In Condition. I'll start here, and then using my dynamic settings, I want to go with a 4-to-1 slope this time. So I'll put it there, right-click and say Finish, right-click again and say New Component, In Condition. I'll start here. I want to go on a 3-to-1 slope, which I have there. Put that point in there, right-click again and Finish. And then again a right-click, Add New Component, In Condition. I will start here, and this one I want to be a 2-to-1 slope, which I can tell from my dynamic settings it is. Put that in there, right-click, and say Finish. Okay, so I've added 4 more in conditions to this. What I like to do now is come back and click on this point right here and tell it that it's a cut feature. And it's what I want to try first when I'm in cut. So I'll call it cut 1 for my feature name right there. Turn this off. I didn't mean to have that on. In condition is not infinite. I only want to go out for 12 feet right there. I'll say apply, and I'll come back over here and pick the next point over here. I'm going to call this one cut 2. The in condition again is not infinite, and looks like we want about 10 feet right there, so we'll change the width to 10 on this. Now I'll pick the next point. This one I'll call cut 3. 3-to-1 slope is good, and looks like we're going about 8 feet right there on that. And then finally I'm going to pick the last point, and we're going to call this cut 4. And we'll leave in condition is infinite set up on that, and don't need to change the width since the infinite link's already set for me. So there we have it. I've gone in, I've added multiple options here for a cut situation. Now I haven't set the priority, and sometimes I think it's easier to set the priority in the test mode than it is actually in the in this window. So I'm going to go ahead and just click the test, and it's going to give me my warning message, and I'll say OK to that. And I'll say check priorities. And you can see now that I have 8 different priorities going on here. And I don't know why WebEx is doing this for me. I know I want this cut to be the first one. I want cut 2 to be the second one there. I want cut 3 to be the third one, and cut 4 to be the fourth one. Hence, that's kind of why I give them the numbers there. Just the order I want to track those in. And then I'll go ahead and fill 1 will be my 5th priority. Fill 2 will be my 6th priority. Fill 3 is the 7th. And fill 4 will be the 8th. And I'll say OK to that. And like I say, that was a WebEx thing. I don't know why that dialog box pulled up like that, but hopefully you can tell what I did there. Let's go ahead and we'll test this real quick. And you can see as I'm getting the 6-to-1 slope until a point. Now I'm getting the 4-to-1 slope to a point. Now I'm getting the 3-to-1 slope forever because I did not set that in condition correctly. Okay, So it's doing exactly what I told it to do. It's just I'm an idiot and should have changed that toggle right there. Easy enough to fix, okay? So that's kind of getting a little more towards what we do in the real world here. Now let's take a look at, I've got some cross sections in back of here, and I want to show you these for just a second, and then we'll move on kind of to our next topic. This section right here is from a pretty big road project that's going on in a neighboring state. And as you can see on the left side right here, I've got a fill situation, and the existing embankment is draining towards my road. And so really what I want to do is come over here. Let's window in a little bit. Since we are in a CAD package, let's go ahead and just draw what we want to happen here. I want to start at this point right here. I want to come in with a ditch like this, and then I want to tie back in up here, okay? And I want InRoads to do that for me. And that seems like a pretty logical thing to happen, because you've got this in here, and we're going to have to put a ditch in because we don't want the drainage to be right up against our embankment. So we can handle that pretty easily. And when you think about this, we actually have two targets. The targets are the same. It's the existing ground, the line that runs through here. We're going to tie into it one time, and then I'm going to go down and put my ditch in. I'm going to tie into it again. Well, you may be asking, well, how can we make this happen? Now, this is something we've been able to do in the past, and we can continue to do it. And let me explain a little bit of the logic to you as to how we're going to do this. We're going to tell, with our end conditions, to seek this point right here on whatever slope we choose to use, and then we're going to bounce up a little bit. We're going to go back up, and then let's change over here to a different color. After we bounce up, we're going to come in and put this ditch piece in like this, so that this point right here and this point right here are exactly the same elevation. So we're going to force this ditch bottom in here automatically. No seeking of the existing ground. And then from this last point right here, we're going to try to go up, and if we can tie into the existing ground, then it means the road is draining, the topography is draining towards our embankment, and we need a ditch. If this fails, we want to, from this point right here, just go ahead and tie back in, and it will mean that our embankment is draining away from our embankment, and then we don't need a ditch. So that's what we're going to try to achieve right here. Not terribly difficult to do. And so let's go back to this and let's talk about it. We have two targets. Same target, both ones. And we're going to kind of use pieces, which may or may not be something you're familiar with. So let's go over here. I'm going to come over here to this 4-lane section right here that I've got. And I'm going to switch over here to the left side for this testing. And I want to add a 2-to-1 slope going down, and then we'll check for the ditch. So over here under in condition parts, I have one over here called left fill 2-to-1. Okay? And if we click on this, we can tell it goes at 2-to-1. This isn't the one I'm looking for. This is the one I'm looking for right here. Sorry. I didn't mean to use all those. Let's just go back over here. And we'll do a copy. And we'll do a paste. And we'll rename this one to minus 0.1 feet. There. Okay. So I've copied this one. That's kind of a neat thing you can do with these components, is you can pick them up and copy them, do whatever you want to. I'm going to come in and edit this one and say I want to seek the active surface, and then after I hit the active surface, I'm going to go 1/10 of a foot back up. All right, so let's take a look at that. I'll say OK. I'm going to say test, I'm going to say draw. Now see, when I draw the line in there, it's actually bumping back up the slope a little bit. That's what the 1/10 of a foot bumping back up the slope does for me. So that actually doesn't precisely tie into the existing ground, but it's the first piece we want to. It's the first tie, okay? So we've got the first piece set up. Now over here, I have a piece called ditch left. All right. If we take a look at this one, I'm running out of time, so I'm having to cut things a little bit short. This one just goes in. I'm sorry, I should have clicked on this point. For example, it's going to put this ditch bottom into here, and then this last point out here is a cut point. The end conditions are infinite on that. And so that'll tie in. Let's go ahead and test that. So we'll test this and we'll draw. So if the line is below the ditch right here, we don't get anything happening. If we get above the ditch, it works. Okay? But notice the line that I'm drawing. It's straying away from my road, and so really this isn't kind of meeting the conditions I want to. But I'm going to show you how we'll handle that with priorities. Okay? So let's go back to our typical section right here, our 4-lane, and we're going to build the left end condition by using different pieces. Okay? I've got this piece right here that we talked about. This is the first piece. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to dock it right there. Okay? So now I've got this one in here. This is our fill, which ties in a 1/10 of a foot above. Now, I also want to drag in those other two pieces here. So I'm going to scoot over just a little bit. I have our left ditch that I just showed you. So we're going to take it and add it onto that fill point right there. And then also, so that'll solve it if we have a situation where it's draining towards the road. If it's draining away from the road, I've got a 2-to-1 slope, and this one's just a straight 2-to-1 slope with an infinite end condition on it. I'll drag it, and I'll also, let's see, let's the window in and make sure we dock it in the right spot. Okay, we want to dock it on fill 1 right there. So I'll take it, and I'll dock it right there as well. All right, let's go out just a little bit. Let's go ahead and fit it, and so we can see what we've got going on there. So let's go ahead and say test. And again, we've got these end condition priority conflicts, which is fine. We'll say check priorities. And at this point right here, so we've got two different things going on. So I'll say edit. Do I want to look for this first, or do I want to look for the tie first? Well, actually, I want to look for the ditch first. So I'll give that this second fill slope a priority of 2 right there, and I'll say OK and close. And now let's go ahead and test this. If it's going like that, it's perfect. We don't need a ditch. We don't need a ditch. I don't have a cut situation defined for this. Okay. So let's come over here and make this a negative 3% right now, and we'll say draw now. Now that the existing ground is draining towards my embankment, I'm getting a ditch. So by kind of taking different pieces, which are really simple to define, I've put them together and made a pretty complex end condition just from simple pieces. And that's where the beauty of this comes together, is the ability to take simple pieces and put them together and have it work out for you. So this is really cool what we're doing here. Okay, I can see I'm running out of time. Multiple target design is pretty much what I've just done. I need to show you another thing in here called parent components, and let's talk about what parent components are. On that ditch section I just showed you, that may have to be a concrete ditch section, but you only want to see that concrete ditch section if you actually have the ditch. So how can I make that happen? Let's jump back over here to this typical section that we just created. I'm going to window in on our ditch part right there. And I've got different parts over here under parts. Parts are parts. And I've got a paved ditch section right here that I can drop in and put in there. All right, so let's do that. So whenever we have a ditch, we want it to be a paved ditch. So I'll go ahead and drop that in there now. Now, if we don't do anything more than this right now, and we test this, when I say draw, it puts it in there for us just like we wanted it to, but the real test is when I say draw this way, I'm still getting that, and that's not what I want, okay? I don't want to have that ditch in there when I've got a fill slope. So how do you fix that? That's the question. And those parent components that I just talked about are the key to it. I come over here, I double-click on this ditch component right here. Well, before I do that, let me check on this and find out what this component's name is. Called ditch 1, this piece going up, okay? Keep that in mind. Ditch 1 is what we want to be our parent component. Double-click on this and say that our parent component is going to be ditch 1, okay? So I'll say okay to that. And now when I test it, when I say draw, when I'm in a field situation, I don't see that concrete ditch out there anymore. All right, it doesn't appear. But if I come in and give it a situation where I need a ditch and say draw, it's going to put that out there for me, which is a really powerful tool for us. This affords us, the ability to show this in cross sections in components and label it and get quantities off of it, and just opens a whole new world to us for what we can do with these components. Okay, I'm quickly running out of time. Multiple target design with variable slopes. Let me just show you how this works. I'll do this real quickly. We've done multiple target design actually targeting the same surface, which we just did with our ditch design here. But there's time when you have information about geographics of the area where you might have a rock layer or something like that, and you can have it target different things, use different slopes as you're going through the different material types. And that's what I wanted to talk about now. I'm torn. I've got an example I can just jump to and show you real quick, which I might ought to do because I just don't really have enough time to show you everything I want to do. So let me do that real quick. I'm going to say save on this, and I'm going to open up this quarter X file right here, and we'll take a look at this typical section right here. Okay, now this has multiple things going on with it, so let me just show you how this works. We'll window in real briefly and double click on a component right there, and it's telling me that this surface, the target for this one is sand rock. So we have a DTM called sand rock out there, and I'll say okay to that. And then this one right here is the unclassified surface. Okay, so I've got a lot of different surfaces that I'm going to be targeting out here. So I'm going to go ahead and test this. And when you've got multiple target surface, when you're doing your testing, it's you need to know how to do this if you're going to try to utilize this functionality. So I'm going to say that my sand clay surface, I'm going to draw this first, and it'll be like right about there. I've got some unclassified structures, and let's make this 3% the other way, and I'll draw that about like that. And then finally, I'll say the active surface, and just for grins, I'll make that 5%, and I'll say draw. And now you see as I draw this unclassified active surface, you see the different slopes being used throughout the material types. So if I pull this way down here, I've got nothing going on with the sand rock and stuff. If If I put it above it, I get different slopes and above it. So it's recognizing what DTM it's hitting and adjusting those accordingly. And so this is how you can utilize and target multiple surfaces and multiple material types if you have that information available to you. I really don't have time to get into the last thing I wanted to show you, so I'm just going to show it to you and show you what I did. And like I said, you're going to walk away going, now how did he do that? I have a piece out here for a cut wall out here, and this is kind of the dynamics that you can do with typical sections. With in conditions. Now, let's say I've got a right-of-way constraint out here that's some distance from my alignment, or I could actually have this be on an alignment, and I need this wall to vary in height to give me a 2-to-1 slope, because of right-of-way can be very expensive depending on where you are. So when I test this, I'm going to go ahead and say draw, and as I get higher and higher, my wall gets higher, and also notice that my footings are getting higher, okay? So the footings are directly related to how big the wall height's related to the footing height, as I'm sure you're aware of. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and hopefully we can readdress this topic again in a future session for these 1-hour lectures here. And that's what I was going to cover with dynamic in conditions. That's ability to size components on the fly based on the conditions of their placement. So in summary, what I've shown you is the in conditions and really how powerful they are, how much more stuff we can do with them now that we never had the ability to do them before, and how this is going to make our lives a whole lot easier. That concludes my presentation today for in conditions. I appreciate y'all coming to the session.